good evening, Rashmi and colleagues. How are you?
Hi, good evening. We are all okay.
Hello, good evening and good morning at your end.
Hi, hello, how are you? Well, congratulations for organizing the session.
Hi, Marco. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thanks a lot for the invitation.
I think it is going to be very early in the morning at your place.
No, but in reality, I'm still in Europe, so it's a very good time.
Okay, great to have you on this panel. We are very happy that you acceded to our request and you are here with us, as always.
Absolutely, and thanks for the invitation.
Okay, so just in 3 minutes, we are going to start.
Okay, great.
Hello, Erika.
Hi. Hi all. Hope you're well.
Good evening, good morning, and namaste from India. I am Rashmi Agrawal, a founder and core group member of Evaluation Community of India. I am also a peer board member and co-chair of iRight. First of all, my thanks to DMEO for giving Equire this opportunity. It is my pleasure to welcome all the panelists and all the participants to this last session of this 2 days event on monitoring, evaluation, and learning. The topic of the session is, as you know, professionalization of MID to enhance institutional capacity, opportunities, and challenges. So this session is a mix of presentation, discussion, and question answer session. This session will commence with a presentation by each panelist for about 5 minutes each, followed by discussion for about 15 minutes. And after that, we will open the floor for question answer. My request, next slide please. My request to speakers is to give cue for change for slides and please stick to the time allotted. All participants are requested to keep their microphones and videos off, except in the last we would like to have a photograph, so all will be requested to put on their videos. And for your question and answers, please use chat box. Over the last 2 days, we have had a chance to witness presentations and extensive discussions on various facets of monitoring, evaluation, and learning. This session that ended a little while ago explored the means of strengthening the links between evidence generation and action. One such link is the quality of evidence. Unless that evidence is of the highest level, any action based on evidence generated would fall short of potential. To help change happen and to make change matter calls for professionalism in generating evidence through evaluation. The panel in this session would explore what constitutes professionalization in evaluation and how to promote characteristics of professionalism in M&E ecosystem in the country. We have a very distinguished panel today with 4 panelists. Marco Segone, who is the Director, UNFPA Evaluation Office. Formerly, he was Director with Evaluation Office at UN Women. He also chaired UNEG, which is a network of evaluation offices of 46 UN agencies. He was co-founder and co-chair of Eval Partners. He also worked as Chief Monitoring and Evaluation for various regions and countries, including Europe, Asia, Latin America, and so on. He is joining with us from USA. I welcome you, Marco. Our second speaker, next slide, please. Our second speaker is Asela Kalugampitiya, who is joining us from Sri Lanka. He is a lawyer by profession. At present, he is president of both SLEVA and APIA associations. He is working as M&E specialist for over 2 decades in international organizations such as IOCE, IDLO, UN Women, UNFPA, ILO, etc., and played an instrumental role in launching the Global Parliamentarian Forum for Evaluation, and he managed International Year of Evaluation 2015. He is in the advisory committee member of IBDET, which many of us are familiar with. I welcome you, Asela. He is joining from Sri Lanka, as I told. The third speaker is, next slide, please. Anna Erika Lareza. She is a young, as you can see from the photograph, young and emerging evaluator from Philippines. She is working as a monitoring and evaluation specialist at Workland M&E Institute and has conducted several evaluations and researches, particularly in the field of agriculture, disaster risk management, and environmental sciences. Anna is a coordinator of Asia Pacific Evaluation Association, co-founder and co-leader of Evaluate Asia and of Asia Pacific Communications Hub. He has recently been elected as the Vice President of Philippines Evaluators for Development. He is joining us from Philippines. I welcome you, Erika. Our fourth and last speaker is Alok Srivastava. He is Director, CMS Center for Media Studies, a think tank of monitoring and evaluation. He has more than 25 years of experience as development evaluator. He holds double masters in gender and development studies and rural development and management, and is a trained evaluator from IBDET. He is also convener of IRIPE. Alok is representing Evaluation Community of India in this session. I welcome you, Alok. So, and before I start this session, I would like to mention that DG DMAO will be giving the closing remarks about this 2-day event. So once again, I welcome you all. And you can just see that ours is an international panel. So I will start by inviting Marco Segone to make his presentation. Over to you, Marco.
Thank you very much, Rashmi, and good evening to everybody. And let me start by saying that it's really a very big pleasure and honor to be here today with all of you at this very important virtual national conference. Next slide. So first of all, let me just super quickly remind why monitoring evaluation is so important. Well, for several reasons, but mainly it's because it's really a key element of good governance for the sustainable development agenda and goals. Because one, it really allows us to learn on what works, for whom, why, and under what circumstances. It supports the design and implementation of effective evidence-informed national development policies, and also it promotes accountability to citizens. Next slide. But to do that, we need a very strong national monitoring evaluation system. And so we need strong capacities. And in the past, when we were talking about evaluation capacities, mainly we were focusing on individual capacities. But by now, it's very clear that we need a systemic approach to national evaluation capacity development. A systemic approach that looks at individual level, at institutional level, and the enabling environment. And it looks both at the demand side and supply side. Supply side meaning the capacity from the countries to provide good quality evaluations, and demand side meaning the capacity of policymakers to demand and use evaluation to inform policy making. As the next speakers will mainly focus on individual level, let me focus on the institutional and level and the enabling environment. Next slide. So when we talk about institutional capacities for monitoring and evaluation, mainly we are talking about three things. First is really the importance to institutionalize independence, credibility, and utility of evaluation through systems and procedures. Second, even if you have the first point, that's necessary but not enough. You also need a work program and, very importantly, a budget to be able to implement the work program. And third, in the conduct of evaluations, you need an institutional endorsement of evaluation standards. And also, once you have this institutional endorsement, you also need an inbuilt quality assurance systems to make sure that the evaluation reports meet the quality standards. Next slide. So, but in practice, how to realize all of that? Well, mainly through two ways. The first is the importance to have a national evaluation policy, because the national evaluation policy is the normative framework at country level that make clear the rationale of the evaluation system, the purpose and objectives of evaluations, the principles that should guide evaluation, the definitions, and very importantly, the different roles and responsibilities of different stakeholders, and what are the resources and where the resources will come from to support national evaluations. Next slide. But to have a policy, once again, is something very important because it gives the normative framework, but you also need a system to actually implement the policy. And for a strong national evaluation system, mainly you need four things. One is a strong leadership. Second, a clear accountability mechanism. Third, human and financial resources. And fourth, institutional and individual capacities. Next. So, as we only have 5 minutes each, let me just highlight 5 key lessons from around the world. And again, these are lessons that are coming from very different countries, both in terms of geographically speaking, culturally speaking, but also in terms of the level of development of the national evaluation system. And here are the 5 lessons. First, if we really want country-led evaluations, then we need national leadership and control over the evaluation system and the evaluation processes. Second, we need to integrate evaluation into the national budget and financial planning. So it's very important that evaluations are linked to this budget and financial planning so that they can inform the discussions and decisions. Third, it's important to work in a coherent manner within existing institutions through coordination structure. So the idea is not to set up new and parallel systems, but actually the idea is to leverage as much as possible existing institutions, but to make sure that there is a coordination structure among the different organizations, ministries, and stakeholders. Fourth, ensure inclusiveness. Because when we talk about national evaluation systems, of course, we talk about a system that is led by government, either at national or decentralized level, but is a system that should be composed, and it should welcome different stakeholders: academia, private sector, civil societies, etc. And that should be done in an intentional manner. And how to do that is through a clear intentional engagement plan to map out who are the key stakeholders and to see what's the value added that each stakeholder can bring to the table. And last but not least, any national evaluation system should be oriented towards supporting national implementation of national policies. Whatever, if it's the national education policy, the national health policy, the national trade policy, etc., etc. So the system, the evaluation system should be really designed and conceptualized to enhance and to support the implementation of national policies. Next. So I was talking about the importance of the role of stakeholders. So just very quickly, obviously there are many different stakeholders, but if we can generalize the category, there is obviously the public administration at central or decentralized level. They should be committed to manage for results and accountability. So it should be committed to transparency, result-based public budgeting, and evidence-based policy making. It's also important to have a strong civil society where rights holders are able to demand for and monitor the quality of public services, and also to have a strong national voluntary organization for professional evaluations, where that can foster indigenous demand for monetary evaluation and strengthen indigenous supplies. So these group of stakeholders make the enabling environments for a national evaluation system. Next. And so as multi-stakeholders are so important, I just wanted to mention in the closing that, last year, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, launched the Decade of Action, that is a decade of acceleration of action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. And we, as global evaluation community, we launched the Decade of Evaluation for Action. So it's really about galvanizing different stakeholders to accelerate the demands and supply and use of influential evaluation for policy development. Next. And within this Eval for Action campaign, I would like to invite all of you the 7th of April to the first global tweetathlon. So it will be a marathon in Twitter with all the different geographical regions of the world, starting from Asia, and then moving west towards Middle East, Africa, Europe, and North America. And I would like to ask you to join. And last slides, as I see Rashmi is already telling me that my time is over. Last slide. When it comes to national evaluation policies, good news is there are already a lot of guidance available. Here is one of them. You can download this guidance on national evaluation policies and in the hyperlink that you can see in your screen. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Marco, for giving us international perspective. Now I invite Asela and to let us know what actually is happening in this region. Asela, over to you, please.
Thank you very much for this. Thank you very much for this opportunity to participate in this panel on professionalization of evaluation and also be part of this conference, wonderful conference organized by DEMEO. And I must thank EQI also for inviting me for this. And as Marco perfectly said, I'll be focusing more on the individual part, the professionalization of evaluation, especially in the Asia Pacific region. Next, please. Yeah, we are talking about actually evaluators with competencies. That is what we need, not just the ability, not just the capability, but competencies of evaluators leading to qualified evaluators who can produce credible, reliable, and useful evaluations. In Marco's slide also, he mentioned about these three, and which will definitely contribute to quality evaluations used by stakeholders to improve the policies, organizations, and programs at the end to improve quality of life of people. So that is what we need, and that's why we need to emphasize the professionalization of evaluation with competent evaluators. Next slide, please. When it comes to strategic pillars in professionalization, United Nations identified main pillars. Of course, access to education and training is important through academic courses and also mentoring programs for professional development, and conferences, research, and other opportunities for knowledge sharing or good practices, and guiding principles, ethics, standards, and also competency frameworks. We will go into details about this. And recognition. How do you recognize evaluators, competent evaluators, whether it is credential program like Canada, they are already implementing credential evaluator program, CE, it's a title, or accreditation or licensing. And the institutional structures who can maintain this process or have the process, maybe national evaluation associations or other structures. Next slide, please. In this region, Asia Pacific Evaluation Association, in short, APIA, together with Evaluate Asia and other partners in the region, with a lot of volunteer professionals, develop the regional evaluation strategy, and it has 8 themes. One of the themes is professionalization of evaluation, and under that, the regional evaluation bodies, partners develop the competency framework for evaluators, and that is the first time in this region we develop the competency framework. At the same time, we develop the assessment pathway. When there are competencies, definitely we need to see how to assess these competencies of evaluators. And when it comes to action, we want to work with partners, Voluntary Association for Professional Evaluation, that is WOPES, evaluation associations, and academic institutions to implement this competency framework. At the same time, to develop competency enhancement programs. Just the competency framework is not sufficient. We need to develop the competencies of evaluators. Next slide, please. And why competencies? Of course, it will help to standardize and enrich individual and collaborative professional practice, and also enhance the culture of evaluation. And to drive competency-based training. The question is whether we have competency-based training for evaluators now. And most importantly, career guide for young and emerging evaluators. I am sure that Erika will focus more on young and emerging evaluators. But at the same time, we have more programs now. We have specific program for young and emerging evaluators in different countries in Asia Pacific region. And end of this month, we are doing winter school for young and emerging evaluators for this region. So that is really needed. So we will have good quality evaluators in future. Next slide, please. What has already happened regarding developing competency frameworks? Several organizations, WOPES developed it, and there's this main article on essential competencies at the American Journal of Evaluation, and New Zealand Evaluation Association developed evaluator competencies in 2011. European Evaluation Society, IDEAS, UK Evaluation Society, UNEG, United Nations Evaluation Group, and also Canadian Evaluation Society. These are really good guidance for any country to or any region to develop these. So definitely we can use that. At the same time, I must say only Canada is implementing it. Other countries have not started the process. So what we want to do it in this region is to start the process. Next slide, please. In this region, I said we have the competency framework, And it includes 6 competency domains and 43 competencies and 208 indicative behaviors. We have identified these, and 6 domains are professional practice, technical competence, contextual analysis, program management, interpersonal competence, and personal and professional development. So under this, we have up to 208 indicative behaviors which evaluators should have. Next slide, please. Essential process components, the competency framework, the assessment pathway, assessment process, and also we need competent panelists to assess competencies of evaluators and processes and tools. Next slide, please. At the moment, we have the competency framework and the pathway. And role of partners, of course, OPEs have a role to create awareness, and governments to do the skill development, parliamentarians to do the advocacy, to promote evidence-based and informed decision making, and universities and OPEs to work on academic courses as well as training courses, and also to develop standards and competencies. Standard and competencies. Next slide, please. I end here. Definitely, I will, add more in the discussion part, and of course, we can stay in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Asela, for telling us what is happening in the region. Now, I invite Erika to give us exactly what the young and emerging evaluators are up to and what are they doing. And I request her to keep it to 5 minutes time, please, so that we have some time for the question.
Thank
Erika,
you.
over to you.
Hi, can you hear me well? Thank you, Dr. Rashmi, and I will do my best to keep the time within 5 minutes. So yeah, thank you again for providing me the floor. So brief intro, I am Erika Lareza from Philippines, co-leader and co-founder of Evaluate Asia. And I'm here to represent YEEs and talk to you about their roles and how can we contribute to the professionalization of evaluation. So next slide, please. Very briefly, I would just like to provide a very quick definition of terms just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So there are 2 groups that I will be pertaining to. First is youth and young people. This is, our standard concept of youth, which are individuals 10 to 24 years old who have either stake in evaluation and people who will be affected of evaluation decisions. Next slide. And then the next group that I will be talking about, which Asela, Marco, and Rashmi have mentioned, are the young and emerging evaluators. So these are evaluators that are either under the age of 35 years old, or evaluators with less than 5 years of experience, or a recent graduate that has an interest in evaluation, or a development professional, regardless of age, who wish to shift into the field of evaluators. So if you fit in one of these categories, you are a young and emerging evaluators. So why am I trying to bring up YEs, and why do I want to, bring this into light? So next slide. So while we are talking professionalization, making sure we have quality evaluation, making sure that they are being used, to achieve all of this, you need a very good, group of competent evaluators. And to get this group, the supply will be coming from YEEs. But as YEEs, to achieve this kind of standard, we face a lot of challenges, actually. First of all, as a YEE, we have very limited access to education to become an evaluator. Not only that it's limited, for some countries, for example, here in the Philippines, it's almost non-existent. Majority of, for me especially, I got my education in evaluation through mentoring, and I just got lucky enough that my background allowed me to smoothly transition into the field. And the second option is to go to other countries to get education, which more often than not is very expensive for someone's beginning to enter the workforce. So that's the first challenge. Next challenge is, next slide. Yeah. Next challenge is entry-level jobs. So for YEEs, these are unicorns, you know. More often than not, when we try to find jobs related to evaluation, um, even just for a junior researcher in an evaluation study, the experiences required is very unattainable for us. Again, YEs, these are people who have less than 5 years of experience in evaluation. And more often than not, we do not have those kind of experience. And the third challenge is, next slide, is opportunities. To, to be able to compensate with the first two challenges, we have to search for opportunities online or locally, which is also very limited, especially that evaluation, especially for here in the region or my side of Asia. The field is still an emerging field. Not many people knows of evaluation. So to compensate with all of these, opportunities are very limited as well. Next slide, please. So what are we doing right now? Us as YEs, we have, a global network called Evaluate. And its purpose is to promote young and emerging evaluators to become more competent, to gain experience, to become more well-networked, so that, we can fit into what is needed for from YEs to become more competent evaluators. And then the next side, other side of that is, to make sure that the youth and young people are included as a stakeholder in evaluation studies, programs, and so on and so forth. The next slide. So here in Asia, here in Asia, we have specific needs, of course. So we just in December 2019, we recently established Evaluate Asia chapter, and we actually had our first meeting face-to-face in New Delhi, India, on EcoEyes Eval Fest 2020. Next slide. And next slide, please. And so why should you engage with YEEs? What can we bring into the table essentially? So first is we also have, again with Evaluate, we are capable of, building networks of, finding professionals to compensate again with others with what we lack access of, mostly because we have, skills or very fluent in online communications. And I'm sure with Asela and Marco and Rashmi in EcoEye, APEA, and UNFA Evaluation Office, all of them can attest that we as YEs, we have this drive, and we try to promote as much as possible to foster a very good enabling environment to have a good evaluation culture. Next slide. So, to develop ourselves further, here in Evaluate Asia, we are very proud to say that after 1 year, we have been able to establish 5 new chapters. Actually, we have one in Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, India, Bhutan, and Pakistan. And this is not going to be the last. We were going to be having more chapters for the region. Next slide. And with the COVID-19 happening, we really used, our fluency in online communications. We were able, again, thanks to UNFPA and APEA, we were able to join this partnership and become one of the leaders for the region for the Eval for Action campaign. Lead the torch. Next slide. And, essentially be able to help to develop this strategy who's very, very inclusive in a sense that even us, number 4 YEEs are being included in the teams or the priority areas for, accelerating the achievement of SDGs through evaluation. Next slide. And yeah, and that's just one of the very, very overview of what we've done. But for now, the most recent one is that we are able to launch the P2P chapter hub here in the Asia region. This is a platform for young and emerging evaluators to, help each other and be able to learn from one another depending on what are they, concerns and for their own development. And then just in in a few weeks, on March 29 to 31, we will be conducting our very first Asia Pacific Virtual Winter School. And this is possible, of course, with the support of, APEA and EcoI and, collaboration between Eval Youth Asia and the Eval Youth chapters. So yeah, if you are interested in connecting with us, next slide, please. Feel free to connect with Eval Youth Asia. Our details are in the slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Erika, and we look forward to hear from our presenters much more because the very informative information we are getting. And now I request Alok Srivastava to speak about professionalization in India and initiatives taken by ECOI. Alok, please, over to you.
Thank you, Rashmi, and thank you, DMU, for inviting ECOI for collaborating for this important conference. So as most of my fellow panelists talked about global, Asia Pacific, and young and emerging evaluators, my focus will be more on India and national context. Next slide, please. So I would say that apart from the spread and diversity of our country, these are the 4 challenges or uniqueness, I would say, and will act as a building block when we go ahead for the professionalization of evaluation in India. Right now, we don't have any evaluation policy per se, but the socio-culturally diverse population, the multilingual population, and the federal structure that we have in the country, we have to take along with us. And when we think about professionalizing evaluation, these things has to be kept in mind, because there are states and UTs which there is gap between the development indicators. And so these things are very important when we talk about professionalizing and taking them along. Next slide, please. Definitely at the government level and in recent past, like DMU organizing this conference itself is an evidence of that. Signing of MOUs with different professional and academic institutions, UN agencies, or even our parliamentarians participating in global and national forums on evaluation are some of the indications which shows that the focus is shifting from monitoring towards evaluation. And today's morning session also talked about the robustness that needs to be brought in the M&E system at the state level. So these things, once is being taken care of, that will be a very good initiative in terms of talking about the professionalization of evaluation in India. Because definitely we are having some evaluations being taken from time to time by Niti Aayog, DMU through DMU, or the state government departments, or even the multilateral and UN agencies inviting for evaluation. But those are some of the things which needs to be taken up very regularly. Next slide, please.
Sir, actually request you to speak a little louder if possible.
Okay. Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you.
Next slide, please. Yeah. So apart from the government initiatives, what is important when we talk about the professionalization of evaluation? Am I clear now? Louder?
Yes, sir, much better. Thank you so much.
Better now.
Okay, thank you. So when we talk about professionalization, very important that whatever framework we design should go in terms of principles, ethics, and standards. As you can see, one of the definitions that we have developed for professionalization of evaluation, and I see it as 4 pillars that is needed to look into bringing the professionalization in evaluation, is like having a policy, legislation by the government, the policy makers. We should have academic courses where we provide specific and unique knowledge and skills, as Asela talked about competency. So that is very much important when we say for professionalizing evaluation. Along with that, institutionalizing the evaluation in the organizations and individuals who are working in this sector. And when we popularize and recognize evaluation as a profession, then we can go a step ahead in terms of going for the professionalization of evaluation. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. What is important apart from the government initiatives, what we felt, and ECOI Evaluation Community of India is one of the voluntary organizations, and there are some initiatives being taken to work in this direction. And we have been doing, maybe you can say, a small beginning, but it's in right direction since 2015 when Evaluation Community of India was established. we are organizing Eval Fest, where we try to have forums, discussions on different aspects of evaluation so that it is not only professionalized, but also popularize it, I would say. And we have also signed a statement of intent to do a kind of capacity building. And the statement of intent was signed with DMU. And that is one thing that we have done. Along with that, ECOI has also developed a national evaluation policy and shared with DMU, which is very important when we talk about professionalizing evaluation. We have partnered with different UN agencies during these events, workshops to organize and have discussions. Not only we want to focus, because as I mentioned in my first slide, that India is such a vast country, we try to go beyond Delhi and have state chapters where people, evaluators are there, or young and emerging evaluators who want to be in this profession. So we want to go beyond the state, Delhi, and have some state chapters. That is one thing that we are doing to popularize and professionalize evaluation and have workshops and seminars there. We are also participating in national and international campaigns like Eval for Action that Marco mentioned earlier. We are bringing out newsletter where we share the resource materials and other upcoming events that is happening in the country or internationally, where the professionals can go and join and participate. Next slide, please. In addition to this, we have been partners with many organizations like APIA, IOCE, which is an international organization. And this is what another initiative that we have taken, partnering with some 9 countries, VOPEs, the Voluntary Organization for Professional Evaluation. And this is IRIFE, what we say in short, where we have brought out some resource materials. And the purpose of having these resource materials, whether it is multi-status report on the countries that are partnering in that, or having ethical standards, or defining professionalization of evaluation, is to make people aware about some of the things and also provide them resource materials which they can use to do a kind of their own capacity building and learn from the materials that has been provided. Next slide, please. In addition to that, ECOI also organized a basic course on monitoring and evaluation for Delhi University students. And this was done during this COVID pandemic lockdown period, and virtual sessions were taken place. And along with that, our partner IST has done some online courses on gender and monitoring and evaluation. So these are some of the initiatives that has been taken by voluntary organizations and non-government organizations. Even for the ethical review of evaluation protocols, there's an organization, CMSIRB, which is, I'm also a part of it, which looks into the protocols from the ethical aspects, that all things are being taken care and being practiced when we go for evaluation. Next slide, please. Now talking about looking into these initiatives, which maybe look like very small initiatives, limited initiatives, but what is needed from the Indian perspective is to have a legislative recognition of evaluation as profession. And that is very important when we talk about different states, and national evaluation policy, which can be adapted at the state level, I would say. A comprehensive evaluation framework for the public money that is being spent on programs and schemes, or the CSR activities that are happening, or even the philanthropic institutions who are doing a lot of work in the development sector. So we need to have it where there is consistency and standardization of approach that is being followed. What is very important is to have academic courses, which is missing currently in our country. And we have some 1,000+ public and private universities and colleges, universities. So we need to engage with UGC, and I hope after this conference, definitely we will try to do kind of advocacy with DMU to talk to UGC, IGNU, or sector skill councils to have these kind of multilingual courses, which students from any part of our country can go and attend and be part of this profession. And along with that, developing and adapting competency framework, what Asela talked about in Indian context, and also have a kind of like what we talk about when we say that clinical research, there is need for ethical review. Same, we can talk about having ethical review of all evaluation protocols by accredited agencies and institutions. So these are some of the 4 or 5 aspects which I feel will be very important to look into when we talk about professionalization of evaluation in India. I think that next slide, please. That's all from my side. I tried to expedite because of the time shortage that we have. Over to you, Rashmi.
Thank you, Alok. A lot has been done and it's still a long way to go. Now we will start our discussion round, and we will try to have 2 rounds or maybe 1 round depending upon the time. And I will ask some questions to our panelists, and panelists are requested to answer their questions within 1 minute time. So first question is for Marco. Uh, you have told us the international perspective and the systemic thinking. So how can international organizations and networks can help at national level to firm up evaluation process and implement systemic thinking? Marco, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Rashmi, for a very interesting question. I would say that it depends a lot on the local context. So based on the local context, I would say there are 3 levels of kind of engagement from international organization. The first one is really to support country-led national evaluation systems, mainly by supporting the development of institutional and individual capacities, including of young and emerging evaluators, as well as the enabling environment. So it's about supporting all that we just spoke about during this session. It's really about strengthening capacities, individual, institutional capacities, and the enabling environment. But then there are other 2 levels of support and engagement by international organization. The second one would be to rely more and more on evaluations that are produced by the national evaluation systems to inform their own evaluations. So it should be that more and more international organizations should use national evaluations, evaluation produced by the local governments or civil society, etc., to inform their own evaluations. And the last step is really try as much as possible to use country-led and national evaluation system as much as possible instead of carrying out their own evaluations. So I'm dreaming for the day when the international organization will not carry out too many evaluations anymore, because they will use the evaluations produced by the national evaluation systems to inform their own policies and strategies. Over.
Thank you, Marco. Very nice to hear from you on this specific question that international organizations are ready to help at national level. My next question goes to Asela. You mentioned that a lot is happening in the region, and Sri Lanka is working on professionalization and developing some competency framework. So what do you think that what challenges are faced at national level to implement this kind of professionalization in evaluation? Asela, over to you, please.
Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you very much. Actually, there are several challenges. First one is actually whether we have a common definition for professionalization, and whether we have a common set of skills identified for evaluation. Because any other professions, there are a pathway for that, academic qualifications and experience you need to be a recognized professional. But in the evaluation field, that is not there, and also there is no commonly agreed definition and the pathway. That is the challenge. And the second thing is that who can certify or accredit evaluators or competencies? That is also not very clear. The evaluation associations can do that, or whether governments can do that, or governments are ready to do that, or whether there is any other competent organization in a country. And also the academic courses, whether even if you think that there is need for academic courses, academic qualifications, whether the academic courses are available, proper training is available. So I would stop here because my 1 minute is already passed, but there are so many challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Asela. We will come back to you in my next question. So let us hear from our young emerging evaluator, Erika. You just tell us that what are the aspirations of young evaluators and what opportunities do you think the youth have to develop as professional evaluators? Erika, over to you, please.
Thank you, Ma'am Rashmi. So I think the most relevant right now, not we are in COVID situation, everything is being moved online. As an evaluator, everything is much more accessible. If you know where to look, everything is certainly much more accessible. So Evaluate certainly is capitalizing on this fact that, now that we just in 1 year, we were able to do so much, whereas like few years ago, certainly it would be very rare for me to join a panel session like this, simply because I do not have the resources to join a panel session in a conference in another country. So yeah, that's the number one thing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Erika. You have mentioned about the resources. Yeah, that's very true. And we should, all the stakeholders should come forward to tackle this situation. So now, since the youngsters are our torch bearers, so they should come forward. Now, my question is for uh, Alok, and I would like to ask him. You have told about a lot is happening in the professionalization. Uh, can you tell us more about what is happening on professionalization in our country?
Okay.
Alok, please.
Yeah.
You have given us very briefly about what is happening. So can you tell a little more about this? What is happening towards professionalization and how much ready we are for this professionalization?
Sure, sure. What I feel is that in terms of professionalization of evaluation, what is happening right now is in bits and parts, but rather than having a very formed or institutionalized approach in that term. Definitely since 1950, we have this PEO and now DMU taking proactive initiatives for popularizing and professionalizing evaluation. But unfortunately, at some level, when we talk about academic courses, there are not many in the universities or within as a separate discipline. But some training programs and initiatives being taken by voluntary organizations are there, and that is very much important in terms of, but right now people are learning more through doing it rather than having an academic course before they go into this profession. So that is very important when we talk about professionalization of evaluation or professionalization in evaluation. These are two important aspects that needs to be taken care of when we say about professionalization in the country.
So can you just differentiate in these two terms what you mean about professionalization in evaluation and professionalization of evaluation?
Sure. So when we say professionalization of evaluation, it is more to do creating an enabling environment, recognizing, giving credibility to this profession, the evaluators, and also giving a kind of code of ethics and code of self-regulation for the evaluators to be followed in a framework there, which is help in the professionalization of evaluation. But when we talk about professionalizing in evaluation is to do with when we go for the evaluation, practicing evaluation, the protocols that needs to be followed. There should be a competent team with experience and expertise conducting evaluation in a given time frame, adhering to the time frame. The dissemination and utilization of evaluation findings is very important, whether it is across the stakeholders. So these are some of the aspects which needs to be taken care of when we talk about professionalization in evaluation. So this is what I differentiate between these two, creating an enabling environment and doing it when we conduct the evaluation.
Thank you, Alok, for this clarification, because there had been a lot of confusion over these two nomenclatures. Now I will start my second round of discussion questions, and these will be mostly related to action part. And I will shuffle the sequence this time, and I will come to Erika first. And I want to know that a lot of youth are interested in monitoring and evaluation, and they want to develop their capacities. So what, Erika, you think that how you this evaluate Asia, evaluate at national level and others have any plan to develop capacities in various countries on a larger scale so that many youth can come as a professional evaluators? Erika, please.
Thank you, Dr. Rashmi. So just very briefly, sharing a bit of my experience. to develop my capacity, I certainly had to dive myself very deeply in, volunteering in the evaluation community, because the opportunities are certainly there. There are webinars, there are scholarships available, and, the networks are also important to, to gain awareness for these opportunities to develop myself as an evaluator and my skills as well. But for Eval Youth, on how we intend to do this, Eval Youth in the global network ones, we have, we do our best to compensate with the challenges that we are facing. So number one that we have been doing for the last 5 years is every year during November, we conduct virtual conferences. And, this is for free and accessible for everyone. And the topics that we choose are the most relevant ones for the conference. So what does the YEEs want to learn at that moment? And then from there, we, do our surveys, what do this YEE wants, and then we try to find the leading experts from all over the world to, to match what the YEEs want. And then the second part is we have a mentoring program, again, with the lack of, education, the access of education. We try to, match this with having a mentoring program wherein evaluation experts who are available to, mentor YEEs are being matched together. And this is happening on a global level. And, so yeah, that's that kind of relationship, which I was lucky to have for me to develop as a capacity. Those are the types of projects that we do try to hold. And then, of course, for Eval Youth Asia, we've been partnering with the PEA, the UNFPA as well, in conducting various webinars. And, as I've mentioned earlier, we just launched the P2P career program for YEEs who have more experience, be able to help YEEs who are just incoming to the field. And then we have just like, the first winter school that we'll be holding at the end of this month. So we are hoping that, the winter school is going to be the first of the many, but certainly we will be, as we develop the institutional side of, capacitating YEEs, we will certainly make sure that for those who are being left behind, we'll certainly make sure to, there are still these options for them to access. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Erika. And I am sure that many stakeholders will come forward for developing the capacities in evaluations. And
I hope so, and I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, so now related to this question, I will ask the Alok that in our country, do we need separate courses in monitoring and evaluation, or these can be taught in the existing disciplines of the study? So can Alok, what opinion you have about it? Alok, please.
Well, I would say that to begin with, definitely we can have short-term courses like the one we organized during this pandemic lockdown. But as a whole, when we see across the country, we need to have M&E now as a postgraduate course, as a separate discipline, because evaluation has all the potential, I would say, to be a separate discipline, whether it is the terminologies that is being used, or what is needed in a discipline is to have a particular object of research which is there, whether it be do the evaluation of laws, societies, policies. Accumulated specialist and knowledge is needed, which definitely when we have this academic course, it will create, and many we have already based on the experience and expertise. The theories and concepts are there. So some of the salient features of a discipline, I would say, is very much there for evaluation to be a separate discipline in the master's course that can be conducted or introduced by the universities. So that is, I would say, as a separate discipline, we can have evaluation and we should do advocacy for that.
Alok. Thank you, Alok. Very nicely you have elaborated this. Actually, in Sri Lanka, I think there are separate courses at PG or UG level. So, Asela, what is your experience about the separate courses and how it is helping to develop professionalism in evaluators, or any strategy to that effect which can be a learning thing for all of us? Asela, please.
Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you very much. And regarding academic courses, actually Sri Lanka has a postgraduate diploma in monitoring and evaluation course at the University of Sri Jayewardenepura. and that was mainly developed by 7 South Asian countries, 7 universities. But actually, Sri Lanka started this program 4 years ago. Now this is the 4th batch going on, and also we are developing the masters in evaluation course. The curriculum is underdeveloped, and then when we receive the approval from the University Grants Commission of Sri Lanka, hopefully by end of this year the master course will be developed. Approved and started. So this is going on. At the same time, this university has a Center for Evaluation, which also promotes capacity building. And I must also mention that Sri Lanka started the professionalization program in this context. We developed the competency framework, and also we had the first consultation on 6th of March with the stakeholders, and next consultation to finalize the competencies will be end of April, and then we will have a workshop on competencies in May. So we don't know, what will be the final way of doing it, whether certification or something. It might take some time, but we wanted to start the process, because the question is that many countries, many WOPEs are not ready to start the process because of the challenges. But we thought if we start now, at least in 3 years, 5 years, we will have full professionalization program like Canada. That's why we started it. At the same time in Sri Lanka.
Okay, thank you, Asela.
And also the Parliament is having the institutionalization program. Thank you.
Thank you, Asela, and let us wait and watch. And I think something will turn up, and India will also start some master's courses or UG courses in our country. So now my last question in this round goes to Marco now. Marco, you have heard all others. Things are happening through piecemeal initiative. So I wonder why it is not happening at the desired level and in an integrated manner, and what should we do? Marco, please.
No, thanks a lot. So why is not happening, let's say, at the level that we would like when it comes to what I mentioned before, is all related to the aspect of the professionalization of evaluation. So it really is the core of what we have been discussing so far. Because as long as a country does not have a strong evaluation system that is independent and credible and produce good quality evaluations, then international organizations will not rely on evaluations produced in that country. So the aspect of professionalization is really key to the discussion that we are having today. And international organization can also support these professionalizations, through bursaries or through supporting local universities in delivering courses, or even facilitating South-South cooperation in strengthening national relations systems. However, we also have to remember that evaluation is a technical exercise within a political environment. And we always have to keep in mind the power relationship between the evaluators and the evaluant. So, for example, also in the case of international organizations, we always to keep in mind that international organizations, they report to their executive boards that are composed by the member states, by the governments of the world, and therefore they need evaluations that are really specific to the international organization for specific accountabilities. However, having said that, I think that there is room for international organization to use more and more national evaluation systems where they exist, and to start with, to do really truly joint evaluations together with national governments, with the national civil societies organizations, or decentralized authorities.
Thank you, Marco. And now I think I will start. We will take some questions from the audience. There are a lot of questions in the chat box, and we have about 10 minutes. So we will take up some of the questions. So first I will choose an interesting question. This is addressed to Erica. What challenges have you faced as a female YEE, and how did you overcome them? Erika, please.
Thank you, Dr. Rashmi. That's actually a very interesting question. As a female YE, a female evaluator, it comes with challenges and so on the other side, opportunities as well. So one very specific example that comes at top of my head is as an evaluator, when you conduct evaluations, of course, this is coming from a context of, quite a liberal country already. I'm sure for other countries, it's not going to be the same. But for the Philippines, sometimes female evaluators, they have the opportunity of, being able to relate more closely to the stakeholders, be able to extract better information from them, and, do your evaluation. And sometimes you can even break barriers in certain cases to conduct your evaluation. But certainly there are challenges where, sometimes they don't even, take notice of you that you exist in the room. There are cases like that. We have to be very realistic. And for instances like that, wherein there, situations wherein I even get into sometimes dangerous situations. The key here is, relying on your teammate. One thing I do is rely on a male teammate. Okay, I can't do this because I'm a female. I need you to do this, and this to get this information that I need. So that's one thing of how I overcome them. And, I'm certainly not gonna let my gender limit me as a YE and as an evaluator. And,
Thank you, Greg.
just one point, at the very least, I'm very lucky here in this community, in the evaluation community with UNFPA, APEA, and EQI as well. This has never been a challenge at all. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Erika, for an interesting answer as well. So we will take one question from Fatima Mumtaz. It says that when we talk about the education of evaluators, what should be the right skill sets which evaluators must have, and what should be the what are the new evaluation approaches? Is there any need to upgrade the current curriculum about M&D? So I will address this question to maybe Marco. Marco may answer this question.
Well, I think that Asela actually already spoke a lot about the skills required, and he made a very strong arguments that, just generally speaking, he was mentioning 208 behavior that we should expect from an evaluator. I would say that generally speaking, we are looking at two big group of skills. One is the technical skills, in terms of how to collect data, how to make the analysis, etc. But the other very important group of skills is what I call the soft skills. That is the capacities to interrelate with people, and it's so important in the case of evaluation because it's just key that an evaluator should be able to relate with the old women at community level to sometimes the minister or the parliamentarians at the central level. So this flexibility and capacity is very important. And so just very quickly, there was also another question. We spoke a lot about young and emerging evaluator, and that's great. But there was a question about what to do with those who are already an evaluator, who are already working in the system as evaluators. And I would say that really here is where two things. One is the importance of specialization courses by universities, but also professional development workshops that are provided by voluntary organization for professional organizations like the ECOI Eval Festival. Usually there is always some professional workshop before the actual conference. And very often these workshops, they are held and delivered by really very strong and renowned evaluators, both at national and international level. So those are all opportunities that are valid both for young evaluators, but also for more senior evaluators.
Thank you, Marco. There are some questions relating to India. and I will take one question, and I think the other questions can be addressed by in the closing remarks by DGDMEO. So one question I will take that India is a very huge country. So do we need a national policy, or we should also have some flexibility, or the states should have their own policies? I will address this question to Alok. What is his opinion about it? Alok, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Rashmi, and very interesting question. And as I said in my presentation, that definitely we have a federal structure, and we have to take states and UTs along with us, which is also, I would say, a very good opportunity in a country like India. So national evaluation policy, when we say, is more as an umbrella, and under that we could have states adapting those policies specific to their states. So there is always an opportunity and a scope for states adapting to it, but there should be an overall evaluation policy at the national level, which could guide these states, because many centrally sponsored schemes being supported by the funds provided by the central governments goes to the states. So the evaluation practices that we follow at the state should meet the needs and requirements in terms of the information, data, and evidence that is required from the states to the national level. So that should be a mix of scope there.
So thank you. I would also like to say that Karnataka had its own policy, so I do not know, I don't think it has been adopted yet. So depending upon the need, the policies can be
adapted
or adapted. Thank you very much. So just let us hear from Asela his last point on how he is developing capacities at several levels in the country, like there must be regions, there must be some blocks, or at local level. What is the plan of developing the capacities in Sri Lanka? Is there any plan? And I mean, there is a question that how India can do that. So I think DG will throw a light during his closing remarks. So this is the last question to Asela, and you have 1 minute. Asela, please.
Thank you, Rashmi. Yes, I must say that we have developed some materials regarding this. As I said, competency framework and the pathway. In addition to that, of course, career readiness competencies. That is for young and emerging evaluators mainly. That is, a new resource material, and also career guidance, especially for young and emerging evaluators. That is also available, and a special training program for career development in monitoring and evaluation. And we already did 2 training programs tested in Sri Lanka, and recent one was last weekend, 2 days training. So those are the main thing I must say. But these materials, we don't want to just keep it with us, but want to share with other countries in the region especially, but of course beyond the region as well. And also this experience we have already done in the country, in Sri Lanka, as well as in the region. So other countries also can start this. So that's the main message I want to say. And also I want to mention that we took the advantage of, like Erika mentioned, COVID-19, the virtual nature, because many WOPs do not have resources. We also don't have resources, but at the same time, that is the good side of COVID for us. And also with support from Eval for Action campaign, we all are, partners of Eval for Action campaign. With their support, we, were able to mobilize our partners and volunteers to work on materials I mentioned. Apart from a few, all the others were developed with voluntary support, and some of the materials were developed with support from UNFPA regional office. So yes, thank you.
Thank you, Asela, and we are happy to note that you are ready to share your material. I think we all should share and learn from each other. Now I will close this question answer session, and I hope that you all enjoyed the discussion, and the dialogue will continue, because there are several other questions and participants may keep in touch with us. And now I invite DGDMU, Dr. Sekhar Bonu, for his closing remarks. And thank you all the participants for a very lively webinar. Thank you very much. DG sir.
Thanks, Mrs. Rashmi. Distinguished partners, panelists, and experts, my colleagues from DMEO and Niti Aayog, central government and state governments. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. As we come to close of the two-day conference on institutionalizing M&E practices for sustainable impact, we can look back with satisfaction for the insightful discussions and knowledge sharing that took place on wide range of topics by erudite panelists and engaging audience. I sincerely thank each and every panelist who took out time from their very busy schedule for enriching the larger M&D stakeholder ecosystem. I would also like to thank all those who registered and made time to join us these 2 days. The success of the conference is a testimony to the power of partnership and collaboration. I don't think DMEO on its own could have done this conference so well. I especially want to thank our core partners who have supported us and also hosted some of the sessions, including UNICEF, JPAL, 3IE, WFP, ECOI, ISB, among others. I also would like to thank young and energetic colleagues in DMEO who worked tirelessly for making the conference a success. Niti Aayog has established institutional spaces for bright talent to come and contribute to national building. This practice of creating spaces and engaging with talented professionals will be critical to strengthening M&E capabilities across all the levels of governments, for the governments to remain agile and leverage latest technologies and methods for M&E. The conference brought together key stakeholders across M&E ecosystem to discuss how far M&E has come and where are we headed. Well on topics like building a culture of M&E, sharing best practices around the globe, and also to institutionalize gold standard M&E practices, all of which would ensure institutionalization of M&E and help achieve sustainable impact. The conference successfully hosted more than 50 panelists from central government, state government, international development agencies, academia and research institutions, evaluation committee, a thorough representation from the entire M&E ecosystem, which truly made the conference holistic and inclusive. Charting the role of M&E in institutionalizing evidence-based policymaking and monitoring outcomes for realizing SDGs, the conference also looked at M&E from an Indian state perspective. We also examined ways to strengthen pathways from evidence to action and doing so at scale. We also weighed the case of promoting evaluation in academic institutions while also emphasizing the need to enhance institutional capacity in M&E. 2020 also threw light on necessity to look at M&E tools and methodologies from a crisis perspective. Lastly, the conference also focused on emerging approaches and technologies for evidence generation and also collaborating with civil society and voluntary efforts to build capacities across. With the enhanced learning from the conference, I'm certain that we at DMEO will tremendously benefit in finalizing our strategy and work plans for next couple of years. We hope that the last 2 days have also helped you gain multidimensional and nuanced perspective of M&E concepts, tools, and methods. I earnestly believe that the exchange of knowledge and ideas which happened over the last 2 days will help in formalizing and institutionalizing M&E practices across the ecosystem. M&E and learning should empower most marginalized for improving the quality of their lives. And it is the moral obligation and incumbent on all of us to make sure it happens. The journey to build a robust and strong M&D ecosystem is long and arduous. The certain way to succeed is for governments at all levels to build and foster strong partnership with academia, think tanks, non-profit, private sector, non-government, and civil society. We at DMU are working on different building blocks that will foster stronger and sustainable partnerships by exploring and building upon win-win situations. Our approach is multi-pronged, consisting of efforts centered around building capacities of the whole ecosystem by working with universities, training institutions, leveraging technologies to make evidence generation easier and efficient. I'm sure that this conference will be an important step towards a stronger and more robust M&D system in India. I once again thank everyone who made time for the conference. We expect to hear back from you and collaboratively work towards building a stronger M&D ecosystem. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. And I request all the hosts and the panelists to please put on their videos for a photo shot. Thank you. The host may please put on their videos. Meghajanli, I think a photograph can be taken at your end, as you say. So thank you very much, and I hope that this dialogue will continue. And Equire is very eager to work with DMU in the future activities. And as you can see that we had various evaluators from various countries, and all are eager to collaborate with us, and something good will turn up, and we will work together to have develop professionalism and evaluation culture. Thank you very much, sir, and thank you very much for your kind words. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was
Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Asela. Thank you, Erika.